but the goal today is, when you're out there in the marketplace with your clients doing presentations, or when you're listening to them on the phone, mirror and matching them to earn their trust and to actually make more money in your real estate business. Let me ask you guys a question. How many of you guys are tired of Zoom? Just me? Or how many people are excited they can sit at home and watch, a class and not have to drive 30 minutes to the office? Me too, because I don't have to go all the way over to the east side to talk to you guys from Rocky River. So there's some wonderful things about technology, and there's some things that, and we're going to talk about, the reason I mention that is we're going to talk about personalities, and there's certain personalities that like to be face to face, right? You feel the energy when you're in the room. And we're going to talk about that a little bit, but there's a couple things that we're going to also talk about today. We're going to talk about the DISC profile system. Some of you know it as DISC or the DISC. Keller Williams likes to talk about the DISC quite a bit. We're going to talk about how to effectively use that to gain people's trust and to make more sales, and ultimately more sales results in what?
More money.
Show me the money. Yeah, more money, right? And that's the goal in real estate, is to earn income so we can support our families. We're also going to talk about how do you communicate with the different personality styles. If you guys haven't had your DISC profile taken, I don't know does the Market Center have access to Abelson? Are they using it or not? Okay, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do for you guys today. I actually pay for the Abelson DISC. If you guys send me your email, and I'm Pete at safeharborteam.com. Danielle, maybe you can put that in the chat. I will give you guys a free DISC assessment of yourself. The Abelson's really detailed. It's like 60 pages. And then you can kind of go in and look at, hey, what am I? Am I a D? Am I an I? Am I an S? Am I a C? And it spits out a lot of information. The Abelson's actually comparable to the KPA in information. So that's a freebie today for jumping on the class. The last thing we're going to talk about, number 3, is mirroring and matching your clients in presentations. So let me ask you guys a question. Has anybody on this call gone into a buyer's presentation or a listing presentation, or even you had a cup of coffee with somebody and you felt you really connected with them? Show of hands, anybody? Like, yeah, you had a really good conversation. Have you ever had a really good conversation and then didn't get the business? This is where you can unmute and say, yeah, I went in and I thought I nailed it, and you're walking out like, I got the listing, or that's my buyer. And then they never called you back, or when you followed up, they're like, oh, I signed with somebody else. You should be saying yes if you've been in real estate more than a week, right? Because we're supposed to collect no's, and at times we're going to make mistakes, right? And that's what today is about. I have 21 years of sales and leadership experience, and I've made more mistakes than probably everybody except for Don Jarecki. If he's still on the call, he's probably made more than me. So anyways, if you need to get a mortgage, Don's awesome. But
that's because I got 32 years in the business, Pete, so I have more time to make mistakes.
There you go. I knew he was going to come in. Don is actually my favorite lending referral partner in Cross Country Mortgage. If you haven't used him, I would highly consider using him. He's an expert. So let's talk about the DISC profile. I'm going to shift here and use the whiteboard. So hopefully you can see. Can you guys see that? Somebody give me.
Yep,
yeah. Okay. So what is the DISC? D-I-S-C. What are some terms for D? You guys may have heard these before. Driven. Dominant. And then the last one, director. Have you guys met anybody like that has a D personality? This is where we can be interactive if you want, or you can just sit there and not participate. It's up to you. You get what you put into it. I hear the laughing.
Our leadership team.
Yeah, well, some of the leadership team is,
Some of them.
Some of them, but you know what, I know most of the leadership team and some of them have D and some of them are very low on the D. And hopefully after today, talking through this, so the Ds tend to be more abrupt. They tend to drive the process. They might talk a little quicker. I personally have a high D, so, and we may be a little bit impatient with the process. So Ds are your people that are driven, they're dominant, they're a director. They can be, your team leader, Mike Rapaski, has some D in them. So what is an I? An I is an influencer. Otherwise known as the life of the party, somebody who loves to talk. Enthusiastic is another word we like to use. You ever met somebody that you're like, man, they're fired up all the time. They're really getting on my nerves. I'm going on vacation tomorrow, but I'm excited all the time anyways. So I'm an I. Anyways, I'm trying to have some fun. Socializer is a big one for the I's. You ever talk to somebody and you're having the conversation with them and like they just don't shut up? Is it just me? It's somebody that really wants to talk, that needs to talk. You ever hear somebody say, I'm talking out?
Hey, how are you?
Good.
You're meeting with Carrie?
We got a little,
Sorry, we're
that's
good.
okay. That's okay. So Danielle, have you ever met somebody who really wanted to tell you about their family and their friends and their weekend? And
I mean, I have a little bit of eye in me, just a little bit. So I might be that person sometimes.
yeah, but that person, you can tell just by meeting them, they're the personality that loves people.
Yeah.
They actually get energy from people. So when I was talking about, hey, I'm really tired of Zoom, it's because I miss you guys. Honestly, I see Julia once in a while. It's like, hey, how you been? And I'm honestly like, hey, how you been? I miss you. I like her. We've known each other for years, yet it's good to see a human being. And I get energy from being around people. So the eyes will get energy from being around people. So what is an S? Steady. Stable. Supportive. Usually S's make really good team players. They don't usually want to be out front. They're resistant to change, and they're usually maybe a little bit quieter when you probably can't see that. Can you see it now? My chicken scratch. Steady, stable, supportive. Okay. Feel free to drop stuff in the chat if you can't see or read or whatever. We have something in the chat box here. Okay, she put my email address. So if you want that free disc assessment, send me your email and we'll get on that for you. Elizabeth is really good at that. So the steady, stable, supportive people are typically quieter. They're a little bit more reserved. They're going to be softer in their tone, and just a little bit more chill. So if I'm really hard charging and dominant, I can intimidate and turn those people off. And we're really kind of looking, who is the other person? Who are they in front of me? Okay. And then the last one is C. Any high C's in the crowd? Do we know our disc systems? I'm not a high C, I'm a low C.
Cindy.
Global, I would never have guessed. And what she was talking about, Danielle, is I taught a class about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. Cindy sent me like 3 texts and an email, and she wanted all the details, which it doesn't surprise me. Compliance. One, cautious. And then the last one is thinker.
Oh, excuse me.
I love my high C's out there. So there are certain people that really need to think about it before making a decision, and the high C is one of them. and just very detail orientated. You know, if we didn't have detail people, us people who are real high eyes, we'd be lost. I was sitting here doing a meeting with my team and I said, hey, Liz, when do I get back from vacation? She's like, you'll be back Monday the 5th. And I kind of knew that, but she's the person that she's got the spreadsheets and she knows all the details. And they're real, and C's tend to be slower in their decision-making process, and they're really going to want to see statistics. So statistically, why are you the best agent to hire? And you better know that, you know, when you're in front of a C. Another thing about the DISC is we usually exhibit 2 of these characteristics higher than the other. So, you know, we're either D and I or S and a C, and you'll hear that. You know, people, you'll usually have 2 of those that are a little bit higher, meaning, you know, you exhibit those characteristics, and then there'll be 2 that are lower, and then usually one of them is dominant. So you'll hear people say, I'm a D, or I'm an I, or I'm a C. And that just means that the 1 is higher on the scoring system. And it'd be really helpful to take that DISC so you can see, they score it out of 100, and you can see the little graph. And then it'll tell you what you are naturally. And then, and what's the other term on that, Danielle? It's, there's the what you are naturally, and then there's the one where you're under observation, right? So how you act when you're stressed. Does anybody remember what that is? I'm drawing a
You're
blank.
adaptive?
Yes, adaptive. Thank you. Yeah, Julia gets the smiley face on her paper. So your adaptive style means if I'm doing a presentation and I'm a little bit stressed, or like right now I'm presenting in front of the class, my natural may go up or down just a little bit and vary. So that's just an interesting thing to see how people kind of adapt, you know, to the situation.
Hey, Pete,
Yes.
it's Cindy. Do you find that when people take this, I've taken the DISC so many times and I took the KPA and I've taken so many of these things. I find that my adaptive style comes into play when I'm actually taking the tests.
You know, that's a really great question. I love that question. And I see Julia shaking her head. People will be conscious of it, especially if you are a thinker, which you are, Cindy. So I would say as best as you can, whenever you take a personality profile test, don't think about the answers. Just kind of be in a place that's quiet. And if you're in a situation in your life where you have a lot of things going on, that may not be accurate. I've seen DISC profiles come out and it's like, well, geez, that doesn't seem like that person, but they were going through like a divorce, or they had just lost a job or something like that. So I think, and to answer your question, Cindy, yes, sometimes they can be a little bit off. So you may have to take it more than once.
Okay.
And it can change too over time as your life changes. I know that I've taken the KPA on 2 different occasions. They were pretty close, but as I got older, my C has gone up just a hair, not much. Just a little bit. So I wanted to talk a little bit when you're talking to people on the phone. I don't know, are you guys using scripts at all? In other words, if you're talking to a buyer, do you have kind of a questionnaire that you use? Anyone?
Yes.
Okay, and then you have a seller kind of pre-qualifying sheet. With our team, we're using a buyer questionnaire and then a listing kind of questionnaire. And as I'm talking to folks over the phone, I'm listening to kind of what they're saying and how fast or how slow they're talking. So if I was talking really fast to you, hey, Julia, it's great to talk to you. How you doing? When can we get together? What is that an indication of?
Excitement. You're probably in the I category, I would say.
I could be, yeah, in the high I, I'm excited and I'm talking a little quicker and it's a little bit higher. What if I was like, real short? Hey, how are you? I'm probably a D, right? Yeah. You are in a hurry. I could be in a hurry. That's a good question. It's getting more to, and the Ds have a high sense of urgency, and the Is are going to be really excited. But the point is, when you're on the phone call and you're talking to, you know, the potential prospect, just really being tuned in to their tone. Like, are they loud? Are they soft? Do they seem upset? Are they in a hurry? All that stuff comes into play when we're discerning, hey, when I meet with these folks, how do I need to tailor my sales presentation? Does that make sense? Bueller, anyone?
We got a lot of shaking heads.
Yeah, we have shaking heads. Okay. One of the things I like to do is ask a question and then be quiet. So write this down, L2. Here, I'll write it down for you. What does L stand for? Does anybody know? You guys can unmute and talk. You're allowed to.
Listening?
Yes, very good. Listen. I think I said this too when I trained the trainer how to present. So listen, and then ask a question, and then listen some more and ask a second question, right? So how often do we just ask one question and then in our minds, some of us are thinking about the response or we're just moving on. So Danielle, are you ready for some role play?
I am always ready.
You're awesome. So Danielle, it sounds like, you know, the kids are starting school in September. You know, why is that important to you?
Well, I want to make sure that they are in the right school district. We've done some research and we want to be in a certain one.
You know, awesome. What would that do for you and your family to be in the Shaker Heights School District by September?
It would allow my 7-year-old to go to the school that I want her to go to. It's the same school that I went to growing up.
That's amazing. How's that going to feel when, you know, you guys are in the same school district as that you went to?
Good. Yeah, we know a lot of the parents there because we went to school with them. So it's going to feel good. Yeah, we already have, you know, we know the community and that's where we're trying to get back to.
Great. That's my goal for you. So asking a couple questions, you know, if I just stop at, hey, you know, what school district you want to be in, you know, knowing now that she's gone to that high school and she's got friends in that community. Does that make sense to everybody? So just write down L2 and be conscious of, because you drive at motivation too, right? What will that do for you? Your future pacing too. What does that look like when you get to Florida? You know, you're a retiree and you're closer to your grandkids and you can also come back to that too. But just L2, asking that question and going a little bit deeper. What is somebody's energy like? Does everybody understand like energy levels? So if I come in and say, it's really great to be here today. I am so happy to be your presenter. I'm a great salesperson. It's like, yeah, you're dead. Or, hey, I love to be here. And I'm so excited to teach you guys today. There's a difference in energy and you can hear it in the phone, right? Have you ever talked to somebody that sounded really flat? And they're just kind of like, well, you know, I really need to sell the house. And so just being conscious of their tonality on the phone and their energy. Their energy could be they're tired or they're not really excited about the sales process, but being conscious of that. Are they quiet and reserved? Is a really good thing to be aware of. If somebody's reserved, what type of personality style do you think they would be?
Probably.
S.
Yeah, probably an S. You know, or that, you know, they might be having a bad day or whatever, but typically an S is going to be quieter and you might have to ask them more questions and draw them out a little bit. You know, we talked about details and we were picking on Cindy a little bit, but are they asking you a lot of questions? And sometimes, you know, based on their profession, you know, for instance, a lot of accountants are high Cs. accountants, engineers, scientists, anything with a lot of numbers and detail will be somebody that's a high C. So why is that important to know who you're talking to before you go on the appointment? Does anybody know?
You can tailor your presentation to who they are.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that a little bit if we're communicating with different types of buyers and sellers. So if we're talking to somebody who we feel like is, you know, really high D, who has that high sense of urgency. Remember, this guy is a girl driver, dominant director, and they're kind of the in charge person. Like, you know, hey, what time are you coming over? And I only have, you know, 30 to 40 minutes to meet, and you know, I'm ready to go. We want to be direct and get to the point. I mean, you do want to build a little bit of rapport with everybody. So no matter who it is, you want to have a little bit of small talk. My experience has been with the high D, they don't like a lot of chit chat, if that makes sense. Has anybody else dealt with somebody like that?
A lot with executives.
Right, so the C-level type of person who's really busy, right? Hey, I only have this, my schedule is really tight, I have this amount, and can we meet, you know, can we do a virtual meeting at lunchtime, and I need to get this done. And was that Cindy that said a lot with executives?
Yes, me.
Yeah, so what have you found in those meetings with that type of person?
Well, it was really interesting because a couple years ago, I had a appointment with an executive. Actually, he was at one point the CFO of Exxon.
Mhm.
No, wait, sorry, TRW. And he was selling his house, and he had his house on the market for a couple years with an agent that's no longer here, that used to be with Howard Hannon. She's no longer here. And she had been trying to sell the house like in the 3 million, 2 million and whatever. And I knew that the house wasn't worth that much because there was a section of the house that had never been finished. And it was a luxury home, but it had never been finished because he didn't find the need to finish it. So when I sat down, I just straight up asked him, and this was a Marcy Capadonna thing that taught me to straight up ask him whether he wanted me to be completely honest with him, or did he want me to tell him what he wanted to hear. I just straight asked that question. He was so taken back by the fact that I asked him that question. And then he said, I want to hear the truth. And I said, well, I'm going to give it to you.
Awesome.
And he literally listed it at what I told him to, and finished the house, finished building the house and listed it at the price. But I just felt like here I had Marcy's like voice in my head. And she said, you know, he's just an executive. He just really wants to get to the point. He's been screwed around so many times now with agents. He just wants to know. And now I use that all the time. And it's a very good thing with executives.
Yeah, Cindy, thank you for sharing that story. That's a real life story. And you do want somebody that's going to tell you the truth, don't you? That's kind of a bold script, but it's true. Like, everybody will say yes. The D really wants you to, they want you to get to the point. They want you to tell them the truth. And they actually want you to tell them, here's what happens next, right? They don't want a lot of fluff. They do want to know, like, about where they're going to be and what they need to do, but they don't want a lot of fluff or details. But just ask for the commitment to work with them. I love that example, and let them know, hey, here's what's going to happen next. So moving on to somebody who's an I, who's an influencer or a chatter, build a relationship with that person. Have you guys heard of the Ford script, or Ford? Does anybody know what that stands for? Julia?
Family, occupation, recreation. Danielle, D. I don't know.
Dreams. Yeah, so, you know, hey, Julia, how's the family going? How's the family doing?
Oh, they're great.
Cool. How's work going? I know you're over at Keller Williams. You've been there for a while. What's happening over there?
Yeah, real estate's booming right now. Work's been really good. Been here a long time.
That's what I hear. I hear that houses are selling like over the weekend, and it's just cool to be an agent or supporting agents. Do you guys have anything cool planned for the summer? Any vacations?
Yeah, we have a couple vacations to a lake house, and one of my sisters is getting married.
Wow, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
You have to keep me posted on the details on that. Any you know, big goals for this year? Like, is there anything you want to accomplish in your career or personally?
Yeah, personally, I'm hoping to buy my first house.
Awesome. That'd be
Yeah.
great. So we kind of went family, job, you know, sometimes I'll leave out the dreams, but at least hit the first three. And when you're talking to somebody who's an I, they're gonna light up, and people who are I's like to talk, and they like to talk about themselves. So just being really conscious of that. And then just give them time to talk and identify with them, right? So, and be genuine, don't be who you're not. So, you know, if they're talking about something you have an interest in, maybe ask them another question or expound on that a little bit, and then just keep them going. And let them know how much you enjoyed talking to them. I really enjoyed our conversation today, and, you know, I can't wait to meet you in person, or if you've met them in person, you have a really nice house. It's going to be really fun to help you sell this thing, and just, you know, they really want to be liked. I know because I'm a high I. Anybody else on the call a high I? Or have some I, Danielle? Yeah. So we
Yeah.
want to be liked by people. We want to be accepted, and it's really fun to hear, you know, words of affirmation. If you haven't read The 5 Love Languages, that's a really good book for sales or relationships. So I can't remember who's the author on that, Julia. You're shaking your head. It's called The 5 Love.
I read it last year. I'll Google it quickly. Gary Chapman.
Okay. Everybody write that down. Gary Chapman, The 5 Love Languages. That's another good one to help relate to people. So moving on, if you have an S in front of you, make sure you give this person time to ask questions. I know this because I am married to an S. And oftentimes I will be moving too fast, and you're not listening to me. She's right, I'm not listening to her. You know, and that's a shortcoming when you're a D and an I. You're like, you want to get to the point. But with an S, they really want you to slow it down a little bit. They're resistant to change, and they might be a little anxious and scared about this home sale. You know, this buying process, boy, we have multiple offers right now. How are we going to do this? Right? So you have to really just kind of slow it down with them. They're going to be quieter and reserved. Tone down what you're saying a little bit. You know, it's really nice to meet you, Danielle, and it's my pleasure to serve you and your family. And you know, you can say you're excited, but you can do it in a way that's not like over the top. Being conscious of your body language too, not making a lot of aggressive movements. If you're sitting across from an S, they're not going to be, I'm Italian, and I'm a D and an I, so I like to use my hands when I talk. So maybe tone that down a little bit. And also giving them time to respond. When you're in a sales presentation and you have somebody that's an S, it's okay to ask a question and then have silence. Does that make sense? Instead of wanting to, sometimes we feel like, and I know I've made this mistake, guys, I'll ask a question and then there'll be silence and it gets a little awkward, especially if you're on the phone. You'll ask the question and you know what's going on, they're actually thinking about it. So my brain processes things really quickly, and I'll use my spouse again, Krista. She's perfect, yet she takes a little bit of time, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what's the answer? You know, and I'm getting short with her. She's really just kind of taking in the information and processing it. So they need more time to respond to your questions. And the other thing with the S is don't blow them out of the water with like over communication. So keep your presentations like on point and don't be telling them all these things about yourself and blowing them out of the water with communication. So with the C, they're going to be very deliberate. They're going to ask you a lot of questions. They're interested in numbers and statistics. They're going to want to know about your process. So I'm not sure if you guys, does anybody use a pre-listing package or a buyer's presentation that they have kind of saved in their drive? Hopefully we do. We're all with Keller Williams. If you don't, take the Ignite series, right, Danielle? You guys
Yes.
teach about the pre-listing presentation or the pre-listing packet, we call it. It's just a digital format of who you are and what your process is to help them get their home sold. Or we have a buyer's process where we educate them about the steps in buying and what's going on in the marketplace. Your high Cs are going to want to see that. So have you ever gone on a presentation and asked somebody, hey, did you have time to review the material that I sent you? What do you think a C is going to say? Yeah, right. I looked at it and maybe I read every single line of it. And I also Googled you. I looked at your Facebook. I looked at your LinkedIn. You know what I mean? So, hey, I want to know who I'm dealing with. And it's really important, and maybe they might be interviewing 4 or 5 people. They want to know if you have a system in place, right? Do you have systems in place that are going to help me accomplish my goals? This is the one personality type, guys, that needs time to think about whether they're going to make a decision. So it's not the time to say, some of the bold coaches will say, sign here, press hard. Are you ready to sign the agreement? I need time to think about it. I might ask them, you know what, I completely understand that. Danielle, you ready to role play? You're a high C. Hey, Danielle, it was really good speaking to you today. Are you ready to get started?
Oh no, not yet. No, I just like some time.
Okay.
I just want to talk to my husband.
Okay, well, I completely understand that. What is it that you need to think about?
I just want to look over everything, make sure that I'm making the right decision, make sure that the house is ready.
Great. I know this is a really big decision for you, and I know that you need to take some time to think about that. Do I have permission to follow up with you in a day or two? Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure, that would be okay.
Awesome.
Give me a few days.
Okay. So, and another question might be, other than talking to your husband and reviewing the material, is there anything other information you might need in order to make a decision?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. So I'll give you a call on Wednesday at 10 if that's okay.
Yeah. And I actually think that's huge, guys, because I think it's almost more aggressive if you guys don't do that, right? So I think sometimes we're taught in the classes that you go in for the close and go in for the close, but I think sometimes with those high Cs, you can't go in for the close, or it just pushes them away from you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. And I've had sales presentations where I went in, I'm like, this guy's an engineer. So I pull out the trend graphics and I have all the statistics and, I'm quoting them and showing them. And then I'm like, you're ready to get started? And they're like, no. And then because I know what to say, I'm just objection handler after another, and they're pushing you out the door. Like, I had somebody say to me recently, you guys, that I knew within 2 minutes that I wanted to hire you. Has anybody ever heard that before?
Yes,
Who said yes?
me.
Who's
Cindy.
me? Cindy.
Also,
So
Kaneda has her hand up and Maria shook their head. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't. So tell me about that.
Have somebody else talk. Who are the other people who rose their hands?
Who else rose? I can't see everybody on the screen.
That's okay. Go ahead, Kanea.
So I had a client, I met him in the office and, we talked and he told me, he said, after I talked to you, it's almost immediate. I just felt like you were family and I knew I wanted to work with you. So, I was able to relate with him because, you know, I knew he was from down south, and I'd had a lot of dealings with, you know, Southern people, and I was familiar with their hospitality, and then we just I was able to cultivate that type of vibe. And even after we closed, I helped him find his house. You know, he still calls every so often to see how I'm doing.
That's great. That's such a good example. You made a personal connection with them and he knew right away that he wanted to hire you. So real quick story on that. I had a person and it was a phone call. So we had a 20-minute conversation. He said in the first 3 minutes, he said, you sounded knowledgeable. And your attitude was that you were here to help. You called me back right away. That's important, guys. Believe it or not, even in this market, agents are not responding quickly. You know, and it depends on the lead source. So, you know, we've heard with internet leads, it's within 5 minutes or you lose the business, and that's true. But I think it's appropriate if you get a lead that, you know, if you're able to call back same day, that's great. But if it's within 24 hours, that's acceptable. But this gentleman said, hey, I had one person not even call me back. And the other person that called me had a dog barking in the background. And he just, he was a C though. And he looked me up on Facebook and he looked up my website and I recognized that he was a C and I was giving him detail. And I didn't push for like, hey, are you ready to get started? And I just said, hey, what do you want to do next? And he said, hey, you know what? He's like, I talked to these other people. I want to work with you and, you know, set me up on a portal. So I did. And I sent him the buyer's rep agreement and away we go. So being conscious of, you know, who that is and connecting, they know right away if we're on the same page as them. So I want to talk a little bit about buyers and sellers in virtual appointments or in person. We talked about the different personality styles a little bit. Sorry about that. So making sure both decision makers are present. Why is that important, you guys? Does anybody know?
Yeah, so you don't have to repeat yourself and
Yeah.
meet with someone else a second time.
Yeah, exactly. So has anybody ever, besides me, done a presentation to, if there's a couple, to one of the couple, and then you had to re-meet again with the other one? You got to repeat the whole thing over again. And both of them typically are going to have different personalities too, which is kind of important. They're going to think differently. One of the things I always tell people when you're in front of a prospect, so whether they're a buyer or a seller, whether it's virtual or in person, is there usually one person who's kind of the point of contact? Is that fair? That does the communication? Have you guys experienced that? Yes, no, raise your hand. What I found is that usually one person wants to be communicated with. And that is the person that's usually the one that's has more of an influence in the relationship. Not always, but typically. So being cognizant of who seems to be the decision maker when you're presenting to people. And when they're together, look at their body language. They'll actually look at each other, or the one who's kind of more of the decision maker. And this has nothing to do with whether you're a male or a female. It could be the husband's or the wife's a busy executive and the husband's a stay-at-home dad. And he's the one that has more time, right? So depending on the situation, they're going to defer to one or the other, and they'll say, you know, Danielle, I would prefer that you would communicate with, you know, through my wife and do it through email. And they'll tell you. I think that's kind of important. Make sure that you have eye contact with the people that you're talking to. I think that's really important. Have you ever talked to somebody and they're like looking over here, or they seem like they're distracted? How does that make you guys feel? if somebody's not looking at you when they're talking to you.
It makes me wonder if I can trust that person.
Bingo, trust, right?
Mhm.
They seem shifty. They're not looking you right in the eye when they say, hey, I'd love to be your real estate agent. Or, hey, I promise to work hard for you. And I'll use those two. I'd love to be your real estate agent, and I promise to work hard for you. Now, if you're not going to work hard, don't promise to work hard. I know that sounds kind of funny. Being genuine too, guys. Like, don't be who you're not, be who you are. And however, you have to understand who's in front of you, right? What kind of mood is the person in that you're in front of? Have you ever been in front of a buyer or seller who was in a bad mood? Or just a person in general? I'm the only one that gets angry sellers or buyers on the phone. You guys must not be calling expireds. It's true. So people could be having a bad day. I had a recent appointment. So I go into this appointment, you guys, and we're there like 4 minutes early. I took a teammate with me, and it's a listing appointment. And she's like, I'm like, hey, we had an appointment at 3 o'clock. It's 3 o'clock. And she's like, well, my husband's not home yet. And he set this thing up. And she was upset, visibly upset. And I'm like, uh-oh, this one's not going to go well. He was somebody that I had in the database who I had been on a listing presentation like 4 years ago. And at that time, he chose another agent and didn't sell, right? And then I show up because he called me, and I actually didn't ask him if his wife was on the same page as him. I just said, hey, is everybody going to be there? And he said, yeah. And are you guys going to be ready to list when I come out? And he said, yes. So, but when I got there, you could tell she was mad. So what do you do when that happens? We just, we didn't push for the contract. We made sure we paid close attention to her. And we really were just a lot softer because she's already upset. She doesn't want us to be in her house. There might be something going on that you don't know about. Have you ever sensed that two people were going to be separating or splitting? Just me? If you meet with enough people, you're going to deal with people who are, I mean, people get divorced, guys, right? I mean, that's part of our business. There's things that happen. People pass away. People are sick. So really being empathetic and sympathetic of those things and knowing how to spot those things is pretty darn important. I'm actually going to meet with the couple today at 4 o'clock, and we're going to sign to list the property and go on the market this weekend. Had I come in a little bit too strong and you know, just paid more attention to him, how do you think that would have gone?
Not well.
Not well at all. No, she would have been like, he knew me, and I said, you know, we met before. How are you? And how are things going? And, you know, I took a little bit of time and I didn't stay too long in the first meeting, but just being conscious of, you know, what kind of mood people are in and how you should proceed from there. When you ask a lot of questions, what does that do for you when you're in a presentation, when you're sitting down with either a buyer or a seller?
You're in control.
Yeah, that's part of it. You do get control of the conversation, but what might people have in a buyer consult or a listing presentation?
Objections is that you're not giving them time to ask questions if you're just shooting them out. I don't know.
Well, they're gonna have some concerns, right?
Right.
So they may have questions or concerns, and you want to draw out any concerns or objections. So Danielle, you're quiet, you're an S now. Danielle, you seem to be in deep thought. Do you have any questions for me, or is there a question that I didn't ask that I should have asked?
Well, I'm sorry, what was I? What letter am I right now?
You're an S, and are you paying attention right now?
Yes, I'm
You're
paying
thinking
attention.
about your kids. So you're an S, and you've been quiet the whole time. So Danielle, you seem to be in deep thought. What do you think?
That's a great question, Pete. If I'm a high S, then I'm probably just going to kind of go with the flow. I'm still thinking.
Okay.
Should not have called on me. I'm sorry.
I shouldn't have called on you. Hey, Julia,
That's a Julia question.
unmic
I
yourself.
I am typically a high S, although these days it's
You
question.
are. Hey, Julia, you were really quiet during my presentation. Just curious, is there something that I didn't ask you that I should have asked you?
No, I think I was just taking in all the information. I want to make sure I understand it before going forward. I don't like to jump into anything without knowing, but thank you for asking.
No problem. It's my pleasure. Is there anything right now that you can say that you're concerned about? Do you feel confident we can sell your home?
I think my biggest concerns right now would just be making sure everything timed up correctly. I'm just a little worried about making sure everything falls into place for our family and selling this and looking for another one. That's making me worried.
Yeah, I understand. We come across that quite often, and we really want to keep you informed about the process, and our goal is for you to feel completely comfortable, when you list with us. So you see, she is really just kind of thinking about it, and oftentimes, and I know this because you'll sit there, you'll do your presentation, and one person won't say a thing. Right? They're thinking about it. It's not that they don't care or they're not engaged. They're just really thinking about stuff, and they're a little softer, and they're an S, and they're taking it all in. Man, I'm selling this house. Oh my God, this is a big deal, right? So you have to really be conscious of both parties in the conversation, and especially those S's, and really just look at them and say, hey, have I really answered every question for you? And is there some things that you need to know that I didn't give you? One question that I wrote down that I really like, do you plan on interviewing other agents at this time? Why is that important, guys? Nobody asked that question?
I do.
You want to know what?
Do you have competition?
There you go. If you're competing against somebody. When would you like to buy a home? Are you ready to sign the agreement when I come out Saturday at 1 o'clock? So a lot of these are in the Ignite series, they teach the pre-qualifying questions. And again, if you send me your email, I'll send you back the pre-qualifying questions we use. We have a seller counseling interview sheet that I've developed over the years, and then a buyer fast fact grabber. Just say, send me buyer and seller scripts, and I'll send them back to you. Or actually, Elizabeth, who's the high C in my right hand, will send those to you. And Danielle and Julia can comment that she's on top of it, right, guys?
Absolutely.
So when we're presenting to, I'm getting back to the D personality now. Get through your presentation. Don't go too fast, but get through it fairly quickly, and always ask if they have questions, and then kind of go for the close. Getting back to the pre-qualifying question of, Danielle, when I come out on Saturday, if everything sounds good and we can agree on a price that's going to cause your home to sell, are you ready to get started?
Yeah, if I'm a high D, I am. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, so you might say, yeah, you know what? If it sounds good, I'm ready to go. So that kind of going in. So when you go in, you kind of do your presentation. And I don't care who you are. Do not go and do a presentation for 2 hours. That's not going to be helpful to anybody. I mean, you can spend 10 or 15 minutes on Ford and chit chat, building the relationship. And you can also do that when and I'm talking about listings a lot, but buyer listings are the same thing. You could spend 10 or 15 minutes, and we actually have that on the front sheet of our buyer questionnaire. It says Ford, and you can just kind of fill it in. And I'll do a little bit of that with everybody, but depending on who I'm talking to, if I'm an I, I'm hanging out, I'm camping on Ford, right? Hey, what are you guys doing this summer? Anything good? You guys gonna have some parties, food trucks? Yeah, woohoo. You know, I'm camping on board because that's what they want. They want to chat, right? And you know, you don't have to be, again, who you're not, but at least engage in the conversation. If you're in sales, you have to really learn how to talk to everybody, or you're going to miss out on some of that business. So with the D's, get the process moving forward. The other thing that I like to do with an I is take note if you're walking around a house and you see personal stuff, like there might be golfing trophies. If we're going through Scott Phillips's house, he likes to golf. He might have a lot of golfing stuff. So use that, take note of that, or even take a note and then ask him questions around that. Don't miss building the relationship with the influencer. They want to be liked and love to talk, especially about themselves. So when we're in that presentation with the S, they really want to be sure that you can help them achieve their goals. And they don't like the change, right, Julia? Don't
No
like
change.
scared of change, right? Fearful?
Yes.
So what I would say to you is I would say, you know what, Julia, we've been through this many times before, and we're here to help you get through this. We're going to guide you every step of the way.
Thank you.
How does that make you feel?
Reassured.
Yeah, and the other thing, we understand this is a big decision for you. Instead of like, I'm a high D, I'm thinking, let's go, come on, just sign the darn agreement, right? So no
Yeah.
matter what you're thinking, realizing that Julia is a high S and she's freaking out a little bit. Like, this is a big deal. I got to sell my condo or townhome and go buy another one. And then I got a boss like Scott Phillips. Oh my gosh, just kidding. Scott's a great boss. We love him. I'm just interjecting a little bit of humor. Hopefully we're not
No,
recording.
he was a great realtor too.
And he's a great realtor, so I know he can get it sold. We're here to help is another thing I like to say. That's a really good thing. It's like, hey, I'm just here to help. We're going to guide you through the process. We're here to help. You know, how you're feeling is important. The other thing, guys, is as you're doing these check-in calls, how are you feeling right now about the process? Have you ever had somebody ask you that question? How are you feeling right now about the process? I see Danielle writing that down. You can use that with recruits. You can use that with buyers. You can use that with sellers. You should use that with your spouse, FYI. How are you feeling right now? And sometimes that might aggravate them if you ask them that too much. Real quick story. So we're going to Florida and I'm like, I got my daughter and I are eyes. So we got the days on the refrigerator. We're doing the slashes like, you know, school's out in 10 days till vacation. And are you excited? And she's like, I'm not like you. I'm not woohoo. I'm going to be excited when we're sitting in the airport on the plane. I'm like, all right, honey, chill. So the C will want to see statistics of past success or what's going on in the marketplace today. So knowing your numbers, and if you don't have numbers, so we have the language of real estate, Danielle, that Michael probably sends out from time to time. So how many homes are on the market, average days on market, months of housing inventory, understanding those terms and those questions. Does everybody use trend graphics or does everybody know what trend graphics is? Yes, no, maybe?
If you could just like quickly tell them, Pete, and then I'll put our information.
Yeah,
on
no
the wall.
problem. So I'll give you a quick overview. Trend Graphics is a program that we have at Keller Williams. That's a third party that uses statistics, and they'll give you a one-page snapshot, and it's got a graph, and it'll show you, like, let's say you do a 6-month or a 12-month period. How many homes were on the market? How many homes are in the market now? Days on market, average sales price, months of inventory pended sales, months of inventory closed sales. So you have the statistics going down the right side, and then you have the graph that kind of shows. So you can sit there and say, and let me back up. If you are not a high C and you know how to do a trend graphics report, or if your assistant can put a trend graphics together, you can seem like a genius, right? Because it'll spit out 8 to 10 categories about the local marketplace. So for instance, if you had an appointment in Pepper Pike, buyer or seller, and they wanted to know how many homes are on the market in between 350 and 500,000, you would just key in the zip code, Pepper Pike, I don't even know what that is by heart, I should probably know. 350 to 400 sales price, and it'll shoot out this pretty graph. You can print it off in color and print off 3 of them, 1 for each person and then for you, and you just sit across the table from them and kind of talk through it. And they're thinking and they're looking at it, wow, there's only 10 houses for sale in the whole entire zip code. Really? Is that true? I heard the market was good. And then, yeah, and then I'll focus on the months of inventory. Does anybody know why that's important, months of inventory?
Is that if no other homes come on the market from this point forward, how many months it will take for all of the inventory to be sold?
Yeah, very good. So like if you're, typically a balanced market will be 4 to 6 months, guys. And if you're at, under 4 months, so like 1 to 4 months, it's really a seller's market. And what we're seeing is like 2 months tops, 1 month, 2 weeks worth of inventory. There's, I live in Olmsted Falls and I am probably the #1 agent in Olmsted Falls. There's 18 homes on the market. 18 guys in the whole suburb. Like Berea, there was 4. Nancy Gepper did a really nice chart on Facebook, and you guys can look like a rock star. Just go into the MLS and see how many homes are listed, actives. You can do actives, pendings, and solds in the last 30 days. There's a bunch of different ways to present statistics, but you can use social media to do that. The point is, with trend graphics, I take that into every presentation, and then I let the person sitting across from me decide. I'm always going to go over inventory and let them know, hey, there's 10 or 15 homes in your price range available. If they're really detailed though, I'm going line by line, and they love that, and then knowing your numbers as well. Knowing your average list to sales price is really important. Why is that important? Why would that be important for a seller if you knew, hey, if I list something at 100, I'm selling it at 99,000? Why is that important? If I'm a high C, I want to know statistically, hey, if you list me at 100,000, am I going to wind up at 90 or am I going to wind up at 99? Last year, our team on 60 listings averaged 101%, and the market was at 98%. So I'm not a mathematician, but that tells the seller that, hey, I'm getting 3% more than any other agent in the marketplace statistically. And I can back that up because here's the MLS average and here's my average. So when we start to get into that commission discussion, is it really about how much I charge, or is it how much you end up with at the end of the day? Does that make sense? And hey, we're not supposed to talk about commissions in general. They're 6%. Am I flexible on that? At times I am, knowing how much I'm going to net in a transaction. If it's a $400,000 house, I'd probably do it for 5. But I'm going to know my statistics and be able to show them statistically the high C, remember, how it's a value to work with me. And here's what I've done in the past. Here's, in remembering though, what's important to them. What is important to every seller, you guys? Does anybody know?
It's different for every seller.
Well, it's different, but what's one thing that's kind of a, what do they want to know?
Their net.
Yes, thank you. How much am I going to net at the end of the transaction? Right? And if you can come in confidently and say, in this marketplace, we're experiencing multiple offers, and our goal is to list you at 200,000. And I can't guarantee you're going to go above list, but I'm pretty sure you're going to be really close to list. I'll actually say to sellers, when somebody else comes in and says, hey, I can do it for 210, did they ask you, did they agree to buy the house at 210? And they'll look at me funny and I'll say, I'll buy the house at 200,000. If I know, that's pretty strong, right? If you know that you know that you know the house is gonna sell, if it doesn't sell within 90 days, I'll buy it at 200,000. Anyways, ask them if they need more data, and we're wrapping this up. We're gonna have Q&A and ahas here in a minute, because we're about 4 minutes after 2, and I promise to be no more than an hour and 15 minutes. Ask them if they need more data to make a decision. Why would that be important to a high C? Because they might need more data, right? They might need more statistics. And then let them know that you know you understand it's a big decision for them. And again, ask them for permission to follow up at a specific time. So guys, that's the end of my presentation.